Hi guys, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 1. Unit 3 is all about argumentation. And so these lessons will be focusing around not only how to build your own argument, but how to notice what other people's arguments are, which is what this lesson's about. So we're going to be talking about how to determine and how to express an argument. And just before we get going here, a clarification. We're not talking about arguments in the sense that, you go and you argue with your sibling about who gets the last donut and you start yelling at each other and fighting. We're talking about more civil arguments where people have different ideas or have certain ideas that they want to convince other people of. So they want to bring people over to their side. So we're talking civil argument, which means that, it's not yelling and shutting the other person down, but welcoming the other person in. So the definition we're going to use for argument is when ideas and reasons are given to convince others of a certain perspective. Also, another clarification, when I say determining an argument, it means determining what perspective that person is taking. So how are they looking at the issue that they're talking about? And then second, expressing an argument means how do we, as the person listening to another person's argument, how do we express what they're trying to say? How do we clarify what they're arguing for? So let's talk some basics now. The first thing that we need to do in order to determine an argument is to understand the different types of perspectives that people take during an argument. And there are essentially three different kinds of perspectives. So your ability to notice and understand what those perspectives are will help you understand what their argument is. So the first type of perspective is a perspective of fact. So when somebody is looking at their topic and believes something to be true based on the authority of that thing. So they believe that this thing is true because there's a certain amount of authority behind it. Maybe there's research to back it up. Maybe they have seen it play out in action. They have experiences and other kind of solid reasons to believe like this is the way that this is. That's what's creating their perspective. In opposition to that are perspectives of value, and that's when a person feels something to be true, but there isn't any necessarily solid evidence to back it up. So it's when a person just says, well, it's true because I know it's true. Sometimes it's religion based as well, will often be value based. um, you know um, because that they'll just have an internal sense that something is true, so it's based more on emotion. So we've got perspectives of fact, we've got perspectives of value, and then we have perspectives of policy, which are usually built upon facts or value. And that's when someone encourages action based on their beliefs or their feelings. So if you believe something to be true, therefore this other thing should be done. Or if you feel something to be true, therefore this thing should be done. So a policy is almost always going to be built upon a perspective of fact or value. So when we express that as an argument, so once we figure out, what is this person's perspective, or what are these person's perspectives, this person's perspectives, because oftentimes there are a few, then we can state it as an argument, a three-part complex argument. Usually the way that you do that will be, the first part will be a since statement. So since, and then you fill in the fact or the value that this person that you're noticing. But, and then you'll contrast with a different fact or value, and then you'll lead to a therefore. So therefore, and then you'll talk about the policy that's building from that. Now I know that's a little confusing, so let's look at an example. In this example, we'll be talking about peanut butter. So it says, since Jif peanut butter tastes better than Skippy, but too many people still use the inferior brand, Skippy peanut butter should therefore be banned. So you can see the three parts, and if we break down each part, you can notice it says, since Jif peanut butter tastes better than Skippy, that is a perspective of fact, because anybody could go out and taste and come to their own conclusion, and it's based in kind of reality and the authority of having gone out and tasted the peanut butter. The second statement, but too many people still use the inferior brand, that's more of a feeling, that's a perspective of value. Number one, uh, do we know how many people are using it? We don't. Number two, we we are ascribing some value to the brands that one is better than the other, and so we've taken the fact of taste and and put a little bit more value on it and are kind of ranking people based on what peanut butter that they like. And then lastly, then we can say Skippy peanut butter should therefore be banned. That's the policy. So we take our perspective of fact, we take our perspective of value, and we build this policy that we should get rid of Skippy peanut butter. And by the way, if you're a Skippy fan, I apologize, but I am shamelessly on the side of Jif. So let's do this with a piece of writing now. We should be able to pick out when a writer is using or is referencing their beliefs or their feelings. And then we should also be able to figure out what actions they're doing. So we're going to read this story by um, um, shoot, I forgot the author's name. It's escaping me right now. But we're going to read this story, and I'll clarify the author's name in just a second because it's fallen out of my head. But we're going to be looking for what beliefs and feelings about the value of work are present in her writing, and then based on those beliefs and feelings, what actions she might encourage. So the story that we're going to be reading is The Work You Do, The Person You Are by Toni Morrison. See, in my head, I wanted to say Maya Angelou, and I knew that was wrong, and I couldn't remember the other name. So Toni Morrison is an African-American woman, and she's known especially for writing about African-American experiences, especially the experiences of African-American women. This story takes place during World War II when she was a young girl in the South, and you'll see context clues for that. So this is The Work You Do, The Person You Are by Toni Morrison. The pleasure of being necessary to my parents was profound. I was not like the children in folk tales, burdensome mouths to feed. All I had to do for the $2 was clean her house for a few hours after school. It was a beautiful house, too, with a plastic-covered sofa and chairs, wall-to-wall blue and white carpeting, a white enamel stove, a washing machine, and a dryer. Things that were common in her neighborhood, absent in mine. In the middle of the war, she had butter, sugar, steaks, and seam-up-the-back stockings. I knew how to scrub floors on my knees and how to wash clothes in our zinc tub, but I had never seen a Hoover vacuum cleaner or an iron that wasn't heated by fire. Part of my pride in working for her was earning money I could squander on movies, candy, paddle balls, jacks, ice cream cones, but a larger part of my pride was based on the fact that I gave half my wages to my mother, which meant that some of my earnings were used for real things, an insurance policy payment, or what was owed to the milkman or the iceman. The pleasure of being necessary to my parents was profound. I was not like the children of folk tales, burdensome mouths to feed, nuisances to be corrected, problems so severe that they were abandoned to the forest. I had a status that doing routine chores in my house did not provide, and it earned me a slow smile, an approving nod from an adult, confirmation that I was adult-like, not childlike. In those days, the 40s, children were not just loved or liked, they were needed. They could earn money. They could care for children younger than themselves. They could work the farm, take care of the herd, run errands, and much more. I suspect that children aren't needed in that way now. They're loved, doted on, protected, and helped. Fine. And yet, little by little, I got better at cleaning her house, good enough to be given more to do, much more. I was ordered to carry bookcases upstairs and once to move a piano from one side of a room to another. I fell carrying the bookcases, and after pushing the piano, my arms and legs hurt so badly. I wanted to refuse or at least to complain, but I was afraid she would fire me, and I would lose the freedom the dollar gave me, as well as the standing I had at home. Although both were slowly being eroded, she began to offer me her clothes for a price. Impressed by these worn things, which looked simply gorgeous to a little girl who had only 2 dresses to wear to school, I bought a few, until my mother asked me if I really wanted to work for cast-offs, so I learned to say no thank you to a faded sweater offered for a quarter of a week's pay. Still, I had trouble summoning the courage to discuss or object to the increasing demands she made, and I knew that if I told my mother how unhappy I was, she would tell me to quit. Then one day, alone in the kitchen with my father, I let drop a few whines about the job. I gave him details, examples of what troubled me, yet although he listened intently, I saw no sympathy in his eyes. No, oh, you poor little thing. Perhaps he understood that what I wanted was a solution to the job, not an escape from it. In any case, he put down his cup of coffee and said, "Listen, you don't live there. You live here, with your people. Go to work, get your money, and come home." That's what he said. This is what I heard. "Whatever the work is, do it well, not for the boss, but for yourself. You make the job, it doesn't make you. Your real life is with us, your family. You are not the work you do, you are the person you are." I have worked for all sorts of people since then. Geniuses and morons, quick-witted and dull, big-hearted and narrow. I've had many kinds of jobs, but since that conversation with my father, I have never considered the level of labor to be the measure of myself, and I have never placed the security of a job above the value of a home. So let's go back now and just look at a few details. We're looking for details that show us her beliefs and her feelings about the value of work. And we're also looking to see if we can figure out what action she's taking. So we're looking especially for those perspectives that we were talking about earlier. I found several. So the first one is this quote here: "I knew how to scrub floors on my knees and how to wash clothes in our zinc tub, but I had never seen a Hoover vacuum cleaner or an iron that wasn't heated by fire." So we can pick that out as perhaps she, believes that work requires that work is hard, is tough. Maybe it's that she feels that this lady has it easier, that work is easier at this lady's house than others because of the her amenities. We've got another detail. "I gave half my wages to my mother, which meant that some of my earnings were used for real things, an insurance policy payment, or what was owed to the milkman or the iceman." So it seems as though she believes that her work is leading to good things. Perhaps she feels valuable, right? She feels that her ability to participate is valuable. If we look at this detail here, in those days, the 40s, children were not just loved or liked, they were needed. So here she believes that children probably should be working or were necessary back then. Perhaps she feels now that children are not necessary are deserve to not work as hard. This is a little bit tricky for me. My mind is going off on a tangent, but she definitely has a belief that children were at least an essential part of the workforce, right? And she could back that up with her own experiences. We have this detail here, impressed by these worn things which look simply gorgeous to a little girl who had only 2 dresses to wear to school. I bought a few until my mother asked me if I really wanted to work for Castoff, so I learned to say no thank you to a faded sweater offered for a quarter of a week's pay. Here we've got, you know, the belief that, you know, she shouldn't be giving her money, like her money is hard earned and shouldn't be given back to her employer. Maybe she feels as though she deserves, you know, because of her work, she deserves those things, but her beliefs and her feelings are in contrast here. Couple more. So this I think is the second to last one that we'll look at. When her father says, "Listen, you don't live there, you live here with your people. Go to work, get your money, and come home." Here he's expressing the belief that work and home are separate, and the feeling that work shouldn't intrude upon home, right? And then finally, this one, your real life is with us, your family. So the belief that, again, that family is more important than work, the feeling that work and real life shouldn't intrude upon, work shouldn't intrude upon home life. So the last thing that we need to do now that we've kind of picked out these details and we've gone over what possible beliefs or feelings she has about work, then we can put together her argument. Sorry, there was one other. We'll skip that very last one because it's kind of repeating the last points that I made. But her argument needs to now be phrased as since factor value, but contrasting factor value, therefore what is the policy that she's going for. So I'm going to show you 3 possible ways to phrase this argument now that we've looked at what her perspectives are. We'll start with just filling in the sentence. So filling in the sentence as best as possible, we can just look at it this way, and this is an acceptable way to do it. Since Toni Morrison valued work because it helped her provide for her family, but it made her question her family's worth, therefore Morrison thinks people should remember that family is more important than work. So we have one one feeling or one belief, it helped her provide for her family. A contrasting feeling, so a contrasting value, it made her question her family's worth, right? She's trying to figure out how much her family is worth to her in that case because of work. Therefore, she comes to the conclusion or the policy that family is more, to remember that her family always comes before work. Now, it's fine to fill in the sentence that way, and that would be an acceptable way to write down an argument, but you might be looking for a slightly more complex way to do that. In this case, it might sound something like this. Since Toni Morrison's ability to provide for her family relied on work, but that work started to change the value she placed on her family, she ultimately decided to always prioritize family over money. So in this case, we still have the 3 parts, right? But there's a little bit more of a flow to it. Instead of just plugging in the blank spots of a sentence, we've phrased the sentence in a slightly more natural cadence for us as writers. And we've rephrased that policy section, especially at the end. It's still fairly close to the original, but it's just a little bit more individualized to the writer. The last way that we might write this argument or express this argument is to really own it and to phrase it in a way that's individual to us. So I might phrase it like this. Toni Morrison's ultimate decision to always place family above work is shown through her struggle to balance the fact that work is necessary to support them while it simultaneously detracts from how she perceives her family's worth. Now, this is teacher speak, but it's probably what you should be going for. We still have the 3 parts, so we still have the contrasting values and beliefs about work there at the end, but I've moved the policy up to the beginning just because it felt a little bit more natural to me. It doesn't change any of the ideas from the previous expressions of the argument, but it feels a little bit more like something I would write. And if you're going for an outstanding sentence, that's probably what you should do as well. So now that we've gone over the basics of this, you're going to be reading another piece of writing, and you're going to be determining and expressing the argument from that. You need to be prepared to discuss your work with the class once the time is up.